Hey, Christopher, Christina, how you doing?
We're doing pretty good. A lot better
Good.
if our internet would stay stable. We've had
Can you
an
hear us all
out.
right now?
Yeah, well, I've got it on my hotspot right now. We haven't had internet in 3 days.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, that's
Well,
not good.
all right. You sound clear. You look clear. So
Great.
I think we can make
Good.
it work.
Yeah, you sound good.
Christina and Christopher, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
You're more than
Pleasure.
welcome. Um, we know that you guys have the Crawfordsville Paranormal Society. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
We started it about 13 years ago now.
Something like that.
Just because we found that we had a mutual interest in the paranormal, kind of different aspects of it. My family, we always grew up telling each other, well, we called it porch sitting, but it was always ghost stories. And Christopher had a
Obsession with with cryptids and UFOs.
yeah. So we decided that we wanted to get a group of like-minded individuals together to kind of look into all of this. And we had a really nice group come together, and we would do investigations and things like that. But we found that the more that we did the investigations, we enjoyed the research part of it more than actually going out and doing that. So we kind of ventured away from actually doing on-site investigations to just researching the topics that we were interested in.
Yeah, so we kind of transitioned from the Paranormal Society, even though we still have it and we still occasionally do investigations, to legends, lore, and hauntings about just doing research on the subject and, of course, writing books on the subject.
So that's all just Crawfordsville that you're focused on, or is it all of Indiana? Is
Well,
it?
so our goal was to spend as much time as we could investigating Montgomery County, the county we live in, and then once we kind of felt like we'd hit kind of a lot of it, start branching over in other counties, which we have this last year started doing. So our main focus was always Montgomery County because this county has over 200 years of paranormal history, and it is extremely rich with it. And I literally spent 10 years on newspaper articles, and without stop being able to find lots and lots and lots of things in the local newspapers and the local history. We actually have created an archive at the library here in town about the paranormal now because we have so much history of it. And then in the last year and a half, we started reaching out to Park and Fountain and Putnam and Boone County. I think those were it, right?
Yeah, those are the main ones.
Yeah, those are what we're working on now.
We're kind of radiating out from Montgomery County.
Right.
Yeah, I'd heard that. We've heard a lot of things going on. Crawfordsville is, you guys are kind of what, south, east of Lafayette area, right?
Yes.
That general area.
It's almost directly south from Lafayette. It's about a 35-minute drive from Lafayette. It's 45 minutes from Indianapolis. It's 30 minutes from Greencastle. It's situated perfectly in between. We're only 45 minutes from Danville, Illinois. So literally, you can kind of go through Crawfordsville to go anywhere you want to go in this side of the state, which is the reason it got its name. They named it the Athens of Indiana because at that time, you had to go through Crawfordsville to get to anywhere on this side of the state.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, we've heard a lot of Bigfoot activity and other things going on there in that Lafayette kind of area. There's something down there, like, are there caves and mines going on in that area? Did I hear that?
We have
word from-
caves, a lot. We have mounds. We have caves. We have a deep forest region still. It kind of goes all the way from Putnam through Park, into Montgomery and Fountain up into Tippecanoe. It just kind of like a branch of it. Just kind of goes to that whole area. So it's real easy for something to travel through this area. And there's caves everywhere. when it comes to these counties down here. You could anywhere you go, you'll find a cave pretty easily along Sugar Creek.
We have not only a lot of Bigfoot sightings here, but we also have deer man, thunderbirds, and one story that we're beginning to research about a giant skunk the size of a barn. So.
Yeah, so we have a lot of variety of cryptids in the area of Montgomery County, into Fountain County and Tippecanoe, and of course, Crawfordsville is famous for the Crawfordsville Monster, the very first UFO ever written about in the newspapers. But we have a lot of fairy sightings. A lot of people talk about fairies and little people in the area. And in our book, I actually have pictures of fairy circles we went out and took pictures of, because they're here all summer long, and in the spring and fall, you can go around the area and find fairy circles real easy, which is a strange phenomenon that you don't see very many places and you don't see regularly, but here you do.
Yeah, you think of them as being rare, but they're all over the place, all over the county here.
So why do you think Crawfordsville, that area, is such a hot spot for the paranormal? What?
Probably
What
because,
happened?
well, in the 1840s and 50s, the Crawfordsville was home to the spiritualism movement, the spiritualist church. They actually had a church here in the town, as well as several in the county, and we aren't very far from where the camp is on White River, where they had the spiritualist camp, and they still do to this day. But they trained mediums in Crawfordsville for over 100 years. It was regularly done. All the hotels had seances every weekend. Some of our most prominent people in the area also regularly had people in for seances and things like that. And we had several governors here who even embraced it.
So Henry Lane, he was a
governor,
and then General Lew Wallace, they were related because they both married into the Elston family, and the Elstons regularly held seances and had mediums and spiritualists come into town. So you think about Lew Wallace writing Ben-Hur, which is a very religious, spiritual book. Meanwhile, his wife was hosting mediums and spiritualists in the house.
Yeah, it seems to be something that has always been here. We had one of the very first spirit photography studios in the country here, and one of the only ones that lasted and was never proven false. The churches were open to it. They actually had nice debates with each other about it. And of course, we've had some big things happen here with fires and things like that have really given life, I feel like, to the paranormal side of things downtown Crawfordsville.
They preached spiritualism and mediumship and all of that from our courthouse steps. So it was embraced by not only the townspeople, but our local government as well.
We actually had a festival called the Witches Festival back in the day that we're attempting to get restarted, which is the reason why we decided to start a paranormal convention. Was a one step to show the community that showed that the community liked this stuff so much that we can get the leadership of the city to welcome back Witches Festival, hopefully in a year or two.
Let's talk about that festival that you guys are having, and that's how we kind of met. You guys got a hold of us and told us about it. We're only a couple hours away, so yeah, heck yeah, we're coming down. Let's talk about it. When is it? What do we?
October 26th. It'll be open from 10 to 4 at our local armory. It'll be free of charge for anybody to come in and check it out. We've got a pretty large amount of people who have RSVP'd that they're coming. And we're going to have a costume contest. We're going to have candy for the kids, and we're going to have some door prizes and stuff like that. We've got several speakers who are going to talk about the different things we did. We tried to I tried to make sure that we had a different variety of speakers so that we have different subjects that we're talking on. Obviously, cryptids, paranormal, and UFOs. MUFON's coming to give a presentation, which will be a lot of fun. And so it'll be a lot of fun. It is a smaller building this year, only because we weren't sure whenever I paid for it how many people would want to do this, and we've had an amazing reaction from the community. all the people who want to come, and even from other places. I've had emails from up to 3 states away of people. Oh, I'm excited to come and check out Crawfordsville and check out this paranormal convention, which shocked me amazingly. Plus, it was really interesting to get to reach out to all the podcasts I listened to and be like, "Hey, you mind coming to town?"
Yeah, we'll definitely be there. We can't wait for it. Did you say it's free to get in?
Yes, it's free to get in.
charge.
We're not going to charge anyone to get in. We want to make sure it's free to everybody to come check it out. We went to one ourselves. It was a vendor last year, and we had a lot of fun at it. And it was free to the public. We thought that's such a great thing because we've been to a lot of conventions where you got to pay a reasonable amount of money to get in, and who wants to do that with a small area the very first year? So in future years we may end up charging something, but at least this first year and probably next year when we do it, we're not going to charge a fee at the door. We encourage people to come and enjoy it and embrace the spooky.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea too, especially for the first one to allow people to just come in and not charge them. Some of the conventions, they do charge quite a bit for people to get in. Or they give the option where you can spend maybe $20 to get in or $50 to hear the speakers, that kind of thing. But you'll definitely attract a lot of people by doing that, by opening your doors that way. So we're looking forward to being down there and spending the day and meeting you guys in person and hanging out and talking about Bigfoot and all the
So
things cryptid and paranormal.
Oh, I'm obsessed with it. It's something we talked about for about 2 years, starting and doing, and it's just something that's been a really passion project to try to get going. And I was really nervous to start because we had a lot of people who are in the field who are like, you'll get a lot of backlash, you'll get a lot of people who are going to kind of give you flack for doing this. And we've never received any of that. We do ghost tours of our downtown every other Saturday, and no one has ever given us a negative comment, and which has been great. That everybody in Montgomery County seems to be open, and no one seems to be biased against it, which has been really nice.
Yeah. And we've had people come and do the tours from every background imaginable, and so people are just really interested in the topic, and we're glad to help open people's minds. So as the same day that we're having the convention, for people who are coming, and especially people who are coming from far away and they want to know other things to do besides the convention, there will be ghost tours that night. And our local Rotary Jail also hosts ghost tours through it for reasonable prices. So there's a whole day's worth of things that you can do.
There'll also be a comic and collectibles convention going on across town at our 4-H grounds that day, as well as the Ironman Raceway will be going on that day for anybody who likes racing to go check out. So there's a lot going on in the community that day, which is one reason we picked that day to host the convention. We want to make sure people who come several hours away have plenty to do.
Something for everybody.
Very cool. Yeah, that's going to be a great day. There's going to be a lot of people there, and our listeners definitely hear this when we release this episode, and hopefully, you said that's at the Armory in Crawfordsville, Indiana.
Yes. Yeah, our convention will be the Armory in Crawfordsville. It's straight on 231 when you come through town, so you can't miss it. 231, for anybody from Indiana, is one of the mainstays of traveling from north to south through Indiana. And you can get off 74 right onto 231 and drive right to the Armory. It's extremely easy to get to, which was another reason we picked it for this year. Because we could have went to the 4-H grounds, which is a bigger venue, but it's a little harder to get to for those who've never been here before. So we wanted to make sure it was simple, and it'll be really easy to get to during that time period. Hopefully some of the construction on 231 will be done by then. So definitely, if you come, make sure you come a little early because there's a little bit of construction going on. Let's see, this time of year, 231 gets hit hard with that. So we want to make sure that everybody's safe coming into it. They do a pretty good job of keeping this area open, but there is that downside. Sometimes 231 gets a little bit backed up.
A little congested.
Yeah. Forgot what I was going to say. Can you give us a story, give us some encounters or something down there in Crawfordsville to
Oh yeah.
let people know what's going on?
Well, yeah, I mean, we got lots of them. I got a file cabinet full. So some of the most interesting places in Crawfordsville, besides the downtown area, which is absolutely amazing, and I encourage anyone to come down and just walk around the downtown area, whether or not you go on a ghost tour or not, because it's just amazing the old buildings that are still there that have been there since the late 1800s. And you get a feeling when you're downtown, especially at night or in the evening, that it is a little bit more spooky. But I would say, one of the biggest stories, obviously, for Crawfordsville, that I've enjoyed hearing about was probably Madame Crow, who is just her favorite medium of all time.
So Madame Crow is kind of a legendary figure of Crawfordsville that had been lost to the ages, and we've recently uncovered her story. And she was just prolific throughout the newspapers. They talked about her in the late 1800s. The townspeople claimed that she could spit fire, and that she communed with demons and black cats and all this stuff that sounds really scary, but then they loved her. Like, they went to her for everything. She held daily talks where you could go and see what your fortunes were going to be. She had a business in the back of a funeral parlor here in town. And they talked about how she used a coffin as her desk. And so she was a very eccentric lady. There was a congressman at the time that she was alive named Vory Brookshire, who had heard that she was this medium and could tell the future. And so he came down specifically to see her from Washington, D.C., to see if he was going to win the election or not. And she told him no, he was not going to win. And he didn't win. But he was so excited that she was true to her word, that she said, no, you're not going to win. And he lost. He went back to Congress in D.C. and told them about Madame Crow. And it's in the papers how Madame Crow from Crawfordsville, Indiana, accurately proclaimed that Congressman Brookshire was not going to win. And he was proud of that. I don't know why you'd be proud of your loss, but he was very excited about it. And he even called her his dear friend. But people believed her so much that one of the most famous stories about her, a kid went missing here in town, and they came to her and they said, Madame Crow, where is this child? We need to find him. And she said, oh, he's dead. His dad killed him. And they drug his dad out in the street, had him strung up by a rope, and was going to hang him when the kid came walking out of the woods. He'd spent the night at a neighbor's house, but because she said he was dead, they were ready to go. Like Madame Crow said it. So she's just a fascinating character. And we talk about her during our tours and stuff like that. So I love her stories.
And the area she was in is called the Nibble here in town. And 90% of people, if you come to Crawfordsville and you say, hey, where's the Nibble? They can tell you exactly where it is. Because the Nibble is famous for its Irish and Germans who live there. That's who kind of founded that area of town. And it has some really strange stories about it over the years, including people have fairy sightings at the little Nibble Park that we have regularly. We have people who talk about that they see fairies there. And when there used to be an old train car laying on its side there, people would say they would see the fairies around the train in the woods there. And it was quite famous. We've actually got a trestle just outside of Crawfordsville that's famous for fairy sightings as well. It's strange that there's so many of the areas around here. We have several trestles. In almost every one of them, I could pull a story up about someone seeing a fairy or something in that area. Several of them now are off limits because of people going out there and vandalizing, unfortunately. But they are still interesting thing to do. I think when it comes to investigations, our favorite story is we once locked it. We took a family out for dinner and we locked the house down. And we I put an EVP recorder going while we left. And when we came back and we listened to it, we were gone for like an hour. And you hear me leaving and you hear me say, okay, I'm locking the door. And we left and the entire place was locked down and there was no way for anybody to get in or they'd have been seen on camera. we hear people talking. Someone's talking on the audio, which makes absolutely no sense. But before you hear the voice, you hear their dog go absolutely nuts for like 30 minutes straight. And this is a really old dog that didn't bark. Like the dog never hardly made a sound. But the dog starts to bark, and about that time, you also hear the cabinets opening and closing, and all the cabinets are magnetically locked with the childproof locks on them because they had little children in the home, and so there's no way for those cabinets to open unless someone takes the magnetic lock off. So how the cabinets were opening, we couldn't explain it, and then you clearly hear someone saying "please" on the audio recorder, and that was just the coolest thing in the world to come across. And in having that where we actually had locked it down and there's no way to explain it, because we've done lots of investigations where I could explain everything going on, even to the point where a child was being sick because of black mold and we found the black mold. But this we just couldn't figure it out, and it was very interesting to come across it.
One of the coolest parts about that, though, is right after you hear that voice, and it sounds like a small child going, please, you can hear the dog just skedaddle out of the room as quickly as possible, like the dog was done.
So tell us about your book.
So, what was it? The year before last, we were approached by the History Press to write a book on Crawfordsville Paranormal, on the paranormal side of Crawfordsville, and we thought, oh, surely this is a joke. Nobody sends you an email and says, "Hey, would you like to write a book for us?" So we're like, "There's no way this is real." So we contacted a friend of ours, who's a historian in the area, who's written like 5 books for the History Press. And we're like, "Okay, is this real?" And she's like, "Yeah, that's how they do it." And I'm like, "This is crazy." So we signed a contract with them to write a book. They gave us a year. And then about a week later, he calls us back and says, "Hey, I need you to get that done in 4 months, if possible." So luckily, we had all the research. I'd already done all the research over the years, so we didn't have to do any research really, but we were able to put it together. So the book was done in 4 months, which is a nightmare to get pictures in the middle of winter when you can't go out and try to get pictures or anything of anything. And of course, finding pictures that are 200 years old when you have 4 months to try to do this was very, very difficult. That had to be like the worst aspect of it, was the pictures. But the writing came along pretty easy because we did have all the stories and stuff. But it was actually funny trying to figure out what to cut out of the book more than what to add in, because we easily have enough stories for like 2 more books in the county. So we had to make it just for Crawfordsville, Ghosts and Legends of Crawfordsville, Indiana, specifically because if we did try to add very much of the county, we would have went way past our word count. They were very restrictive on how many words we were allowed. And so because of it, I'm like, okay, well, I can't do too much over here. So we planned a second book on Montgomery County itself to address those stories in the history and the legends. But it was a lot of fun. And of course, trying to make sure that all the stories we could find were legit. Like they weren't hearsay. They weren't where somebody, oh, I heard this before. We either came from the person's mouth, came from a newspaper article, a book, or it was a legend that we've all grown up with, kind of thing. And so that was a lot of fun, was making sure that everything was as legit as we could make it. And almost every article, every part of that book I either have the newspaper article that goes with it, or I actually typed it out in the book so that people could look it up themselves if they wanted to. So that was a lot of fun.
And I think you said this earlier. So it's 200 years of history of Crawfordsville, Indiana in the book. We have it broken down into kind of different sections of the places. So we talk about the valley, which locally we call it the valley in the book, but locally it's known as Spooky Hollow. And so we have a lot of stories down there. A lot of crazy things have happened, and every town has their version of the classic urban legends. All of ours happen in Spooky Hollow.
Just about.
Yeah. And so we have a whole section on Wabash College, which has some really great stories.
Which was a lot of fun to collect because I work for Wabash College. And so working there and getting to talk to the other custodians, especially some of them have been there for over 30 years, and getting their stories on top of things I've actually, I've dealt with myself, was a lot of fun. And then being able to collaborate that with newspaper articles and things like that was just a blast. Like one of her favorite things about the college was ghost cats. that we found, which I don't think we put in the book.
We didn't. I think we cut it out of this book. But we found an article about the science wing of the college that they had been doing some dissecting of cats, and the boys were not being humane with what they were doing with the remains. And they started complaining that they were all being haunted by ghost cats. And so they decided to humanely dispose of the waste material. And after that, they were no longer haunted. But I thought that was a really great story. As rightly, you should be haunted by ghost cats if you're not doing things humanely. So,
and of course, Wabash has been here forever. Wabash itself was originated about the same time the town of Crawfordsville was originated. It's very close in dates, and so it's a beautiful place to go. And every building there, up to this point, except for maybe two, are well over 70, 80 years old. Several of them have been gutted and remodeled, but most of them are extremely old, including Center Hall, which is our oldest building on campus. It was one of the first buildings ever built on the campus, and you can't walk in that place day or night without feeling something in there with you. And if you go there at night, you will. I've never met a person who's not been there at night alone who has not heard something when they've walked through there, even when you're trying your best not to. And I'm a huge skeptic to a lot of things, but you can't walk through that building without hearing things. It's just a weird building, and some of the stuff may be explainable, but it's just a weird building you can't go through without hearing stuff. And anybody who spends any time in the library there is terrified if they have to be there at night, because the library, things happen every day. And you hear lots of stories from the staff as well as the custodians. I've literally seen books thrown at people off of shelf for no reason. They just fly off the shelf. We're like, what the heck just happened? We have some shelves that open and close, and they are on a brake system. But even with the brake set, they will still move on their own, and they like to try to catch people in between them. And so it's a weird college.
And Lambda Chi has its own resident ghost that watches over the house.
Yes.
And they have a memorial dedicated to her. So she's their house mother.
Yeah.
Very cool. Is that like the scene from Ghostbusters in the library?
Yeah, I would definitely say it. I mean, I've never seen it, but I have talked to a couple of guys who have seen a black mass going around the building, and to the point where it like blacked out the entire area. There's on the top floor, when you get off the elevator, it's a very small area on the top floor, and when you walk through, it feels like, especially at night, because there's only the security lights on. You almost feel like there's something just waiting in the dark there to just reach out and grab you at any time. And a lot of guys have talked about how all of a sudden there's something black that covers up the lights and they can't see. And it was just, I got to get back to the elevator. I got to get back to the elevator. We have several people who won't go in that building alone because of it. One of the buildings on campus, the elevator likes to move on its own for no reason. And that building, the guy was cleaning it, started hearing people call out his name and was like, hey, join the party kind of thing. Because he'd always hear parties going on in the main hall, even though there'd be nothing going on, because that's a place we have parties regularly. And he'd be like, what's going on? I've already cleaned all this up. What's going on? But the elevator would move and he would hear someone call his name. He quit the college after that because he was like, I can't work there. Something bad's going to happen to me.
It felt very much when he was telling us the story about like that scene from The Shining, where they're hearing the party and they want you to join the party.
That's what I was just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was there for, I think, less than a week after that. And he was like, I can't do this. So he did not want to work night shift anymore.
Yeah, I just
you're giving me goosebumps talking about this stuff. I love it.
The chapel on Wabash College is also haunted, but its entity is not so nice, and it likes to push people downstairs. So
yeah,
there are some workers of the college who refuse to work in the chapel anymore. So.
Well, and a lot of people are okay if they have to go on the first floor, but if you have to go up on the second floor, it's all open because it's a balcony area, and people don't want to go up there because they have felt like something's trying to push them over the balcony. And you'll see. When you're cleaning in there, if you look up out of the corner of your eye, you'll see someone standing up there. And it's just like, I don't know anybody who's cleaned it who hasn't seen that, because it's just a regular thing you see. And it just seems like there's like a shape that you'll see up there. And they talk about how he'll yell at them if they're not cleaning it, like they're just sitting around or whatever. It's like he's a past staff member or something. He's like, hey, you're supposed to get to work or get out, kind of idea. And one lady, one lady has like conversations with him. She tells me she goes in there and she'll just talk to him to keep him from bothering her. But she's been there for almost 40 years. So she's a little bit more open to everything on the campus, and she can tell you stories that'll curl your toes. But it's a fascinating place. But of course, then we have the old hospital, which is terrifying in of itself. The morgue was still there up till about 4 years ago, from the time they built the building. It's been through like 3 or 4 different renovations, going from being a hospital into an apartment complex. And then it's been an apartment complex at least twice, if not 3 times. And they never took the morgue out until these new owners finally took the morgue out. And you could go right down to the morgue. I mean, obviously there was no bodies or equipment anymore, but all the freezers were still there. All that was still there. And people would go down there and they would like hear things and freak out. And I don't know anybody who's ever lived in that apartment complex who doesn't have a story to tell. We have a group called Wabash Paranormal out of Lafayette who came down and they did a walk through it. And they had some good footage on some things that they heard as they were walking through the building.
There's probably not a person who's lived here in Crawfordsville for any significant amount of time that hasn't themselves had an experience at that old hospital or directly knows somebody who has. It has been very prevalent throughout everybody's life that, that is a scary place to go.
And you hear a lot of people talk about when they're outside the place, seeing a woman upstairs walking along through the windows or even up on the roof. Because there was a death at the building where someone fell off the roof or jumped off the roof at some point. It was a sanitarium for a while, as well as a hospital. So it was a very open place for that kind of thing. So, and we've had a couple sanitariums in the town of Crawfordsville. And so that's a whole other aspect of this kind of stuff, is when you have that kind of thing going on in the area. There's still a light bath from one of the sanitariums at one of our antique stores called Whimsy in town. You can go there and actually see a light bath from one of the sanitariums that was here in Crawfordsville. But it's just there's so much history, and it's so many different little things. And I don't know anybody who hasn't, besides me probably, who hasn't had like some kind of sighting or something on a regular basis in their homes, even, because it's just such an old town.
One of the great aspects of having written this book and then doing these tours and hosting this convention is we're getting more and more people coming to us and sharing stories. And then the stories they're sharing are just confirming the stories that we've heard over and over again. And that's one thing that just absolutely tickles us when you get a confirming story. This story matches up exactly to 5 other stories someone else has told us. To us, even though that is not, hard concrete proof, that's enough proof to put into research. That you're getting the same story over and over again from different people.
We actually got that with the library here in town. We built a new library, 2002? 2005. And so when we were doing the ghost tours this year, we wanted to add something new to it because she's always trying to add new things into it. And so we went down the rabbit hole to find the Spiritual Hall. It was a museum dedicated to spiritualism in the city by Fisher Doherty, one of the most famous people for spiritualism in this area. And he built it when we couldn't find it. And then finally she finds it and finds out that it's on the second floor. Where it was is now the second floor of the library.
So the library was always meant to be a place of learning and collecting. I work for the library. I've worked there for over 24 years. And I was so excited to figure out that this was the location. And I shared that with the reference staff. And as soon as I did, the confirmations back from them was like, well, yeah, that confirms the things that we've been seeing. And I said, like, what do you mean? What have you been seeing? And now reference staff members have been coming to me and telling me all of these stories that they have been seeing in the building on the second floor.
So we are planning an investigation there, maybe later this week or next week. What is that?
That I don't know when that's going to
Yeah,
happen. We would love to get we have some of the staff members are like, yes, do this, but we need to have official.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're trying to plan an investigation of that second floor now that we've heard that stuff. We're also planning an investigation to go back to the Carnegie Museum, which was our library up until then, on October 5th, because we found some very interesting things when we were there last time. The K2 meter wouldn't stay steady the whole time I walked around the building. And when we went to some photos, they were paintings that someone had painted, and they're sitting in the middle of the room, so they're not against a wall or electrical outlet or anything like that. They wouldn't stay steady. They just kept going nuts. They were there at the very top almost the entire time. You'd go near the painting, you'd walk away, they'd go down, you'd go back, and then go right back up again. We were playing with a ghost box, which we don't normally do, but we were playing with one that day because a friend of ours brought it to test it out, and there were some interesting hits on it. Whether or not that's a real device or not, we're not really sure, but it was a very interesting answers to questions right beside a military display.
It was military uniforms from past residents throughout the ages. The Carnegie, what was the Carnegie Library is now the Carnegie Museum in Montgomery County. So it's a museum dedicated to Montgomery County. So it had all of these uniforms from former residents throughout the many different wars. And while we were sitting there with the box, it kept throwing up words like war and hurt and pain and things like that. And so as we were asking questions, it seemed to be corroborating what we were saying, which was very interesting. So we're really excited to go back and investigate the museum again. And that investigation is actually going to be open to the public. The museum is going to charge. We're not. All of the money made from that will go to fund the museum. But it will be an after hours open to the public investigation. They can come in, play with our equipment, do whatever they like, and check out the museum.
Sounds like a good time to me.
I think it'd be a lot of fun for people to get to come and play with stuff they've never played with before and never got to do, but they see it on TV or they hear it on a podcast, you know. So that was the whole idea behind it, was it's kind of a learning experience for beginners to come and check it out and have a good time.
You guys both had mentioned something. One, you talked about how when you hear encounters from people, that you hear key things that they say that are repetitive of what other people have said, and we get that too when we're doing different kind of encounters. There's always something that I'm waiting to hear, or something that somebody says that makes me go, these things are real. People are seeing these things, because this person does not know this other person that we've talked to, and we've heard this exact detail, and and it's just crazy, it really. And the more you hear it, the more you believe it, obviously. So the other thing, I forgot what the other thing was.
Well, while you're
maybe,
thinking,
maybe I'll remember it. Maybe I'll remember it.
World.
one of the cool stories
Oh.
that we're hearing over and over, and without like giving any spoilers, because I don't want anybody else to come and like corroborate this now, is there is a particular house in this town that we have heard story after story after, I mean, horrific. Like it is the stuff that gives me nightmares that I've heard. And so we don't ever tell anybody where the location is, but people will come up to us. They don't know each other. We've had people who've moved away from town and then like are coming back to visit, and they come to talk to us. Hey, when I was a kid, and they would tell us these stories, and we were like, this sounds really familiar. And we'd say, hey, where's that house? And they'd say, it's right here. And it's the same house over and over again. And it is one of the most terrifying stories over and over to all of these people that I've heard come out of Crawfordsville.
Which isn't fun whenever that house is less than a block from us.
It is very close to where we live. And it keeps going up for sale over and over again. And it makes you wonder why. But we would love to at some point be able to talk to the owner and get permission to go in and do some stuff in that house. But I don't know that I'm going to be able to be the one that does it, because I've never stepped foot in it and I'm terrified of it.
Well, when we come down there, you're going to have to show us where it's at so we can.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, we'll send Brian in and see what happens.
You know,
That'll
We'll
work.
give him a walkie-talkie. Brian, you there?
right?
No, the other thing I remembered was you guys talked about, you know, a lot of these places that are haunted, like hospitals, morgues, even battlegrounds. You think about that. I mean, is it just plain and simple for the fact that a lot of people have just passed away in these areas, and that's probably one of the reasons why that there's that activity?
I think it's the energy when you pass away, because like we have 3, 4 graveyards, 5 graveyards, I think, in our town, and I've only ever heard stories about 2 of them. And I think that it's based around the energy that's there. Like if you died horribly in that area, you're kind of giving off an energy that's going to be still there, kind of idea. Or like when you were buried or from being hung, because we did have 3 hangings in Crawfordsville at our local jail back in the day. Those people obviously, that death kind of lingers. The energy is going to kind of linger, and so the graveyard that they were buried at, I could definitely feel like you would have something there when you would go into it, and maybe some of this because we had so many mediums, in the country at one point, in the mid 1800s, there were so many of them, whether or not they were real or not real, summoning things that maybe has also put like an energy in certain places, that you can kind of feel it animate because you kind of notice like when you go into we have a bar here in town, in an old hotel, and we know several people have died there and committed suicide in the place. And just going in there, you automatically kind of feel like a weird energy when you walk into the place. But it's a fascinating place to go. But I mean, I think you hit that on the head that when you have a lot of death in an area, you're gonna have something.
Well, and kind of going back to cooperating things and inviting things to come, like all the spiritualism and spiritualists that we've had here, the mediumships that we've had going on here. We personally believe that when you open yourself up to this, when you hear these stories and you're willing to partake in taking in the stories, that you open yourselves up to more things. And so we think because the town has been so open to this stuff throughout the years, there are more things here. And we have had this over and over again, like with our ghost tours, that people will email us or approach us after they've taken one of our tours and said, when I went home, things happened. And they're like, did something follow me from your walk? And we'd say, we don't think anything followed you from your walk. We think that you went on our walk, you opened your mind, you opened yourself up to this stuff. And so now you're seeing things that you wouldn't have noticed before.
Yeah, you see that a lot. Once someone has an experience, they continue to have experiences from then on. It's not a one and done at all. You see that a lot with cryptids, especially Bigfoot. It seems to be like when a person sees Bigfoot that first time, they'll see Bigfoot a lot after that. It seems to be something like that. And I also noticed, like even besides the ghosts and things like that, with cryptids and UFOs, they collaborate to an area. Like we're here, I could name probably 25 cryptids in Montgomery County that I have writings about, and not to mention UFOs and things like that. So there's a lot of those kind of things where it seems to be like certain areas are hot spots for those things for whatever reasons, and it seems to be like cave areas seem to be the biggest hot spots, places where you have a lot of caves, a lot of running water, things like that. See a lot of forestry. You see a lot of hot spots for a lot of different things.
Why don't you tell us about a cryptid or two that's been sighted around there?
Okay, so in 1891, we have the Crawfordsville Sky Monster, who was seen, which is my favorite thing of all time. I'm obsessed with it. I actually have it. I have a drawing of it on my wall beside me. But it was seen in 1891 on September 4th and 5th, somewhere between the hours of 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. in the morning. The first day it was seen by Reverend Switzer, and he came out to get a drink from the well. And when he did, he stepped outside and he saw something in the sky that he couldn't explain. He described it as looking like white drapery up in the sky, and he said it raised anywhere from 300 feet into the air all the way down to the ground at one point, and hovered just above the ground. He said it was 16 feet long, 8 feet wide. It had a red, like a fiery spot on it. He doesn't tell us in the description exactly where that was, but other interviews say it was more towards the middle. And they do describe the creature as not having a head or a tail, being able to tell which side was which from it. It seemed more like a circular idea. And then after he went back, he went and got his wife, and they looked at it, and they're like, "Oh my lord!" And then they went back in the house. How you just go back in the house? I don't understand, but he did. Two other gentlemen who were loading up an ice wagon saw it, and it terrified them so much they hid in a barn for several hours till it was gone. And then it came back the very next night at the exact same time. The interviews, over 100 people saw it the second day. They all talk about that it was the exact same moment when it was in the sky. It did the exact same thing when it came through the town, with the same trajectory and everything. And those interviews still exist. I'm attempting to get my hands on them. And so it was very interesting. The sad thing was, about 2 weeks later, two gentlemen came out in the local paper and said it was just a flock of killdeer and tried to kill it. And then after that, we have stories of where the local populace were upset with that theory, because everybody in the nation was like, this is just a flock of killdeer. No, it's nothing.
Crazy Crawfordsville doesn't know what birds are.
And people were upset about this because they're like, no, that we know what killdeer are. This wasn't killdeer. This was something we can't explain. And how do you explain something coming back the exact same time 2 days in a row? That's kind of a weird thing. And then I would say another cryptid in this area.
Before you move on from that, so the townspeople were upset about these guys saying it was birds, and then birds is the leading theory for the Crawfordsville monster. If you just generally look it up, you will see people say it was a flock of birds. But we've done the deep dive research. We have that in the book. We can show you what we've done. People were saying it was not birds.
Well, that's the fiery spot on it. They would talk about how people got sick from it from the heat, and almost like a radiation sickness they felt like when it came off of it.
But we also found stories where we had it 2 nights in September in 1891, but we found stories before us where it was seen in Ohio, and stories after us where it was seen in Illinois.
Something extremely similar, according to the descriptions. So that was very strange for that one kind of thing. And so it's very interesting to see. Of course, we have our own theories about it. She's convinced it was a hot air balloon.
I'm convinced it was a hot air balloon. They said it looked like floating drapery. It had a fiery red eye. It made a mechanical noise. It floated up and down, and it made people nauseous when they got near it. So natural, it's gas. That's what I think. I think from this description, it was a hot air balloon. He absolutely hates that. Feel free to hate on me for it. I am a believer. I believe in things. I just believe the Crawfordsville monster was a hot air balloon.
I think more along the lines it was either an atmospheric beast or a UFO. Those are where my thoughts are from reading all the things I've come up with about it. I would say another big cryptid to Crawfordsville would be the trowel creatures that have been seen. A trowel is a version of a troll from fairy legend, and they are believed to live in mounds or into brush piles, and they come out into people's houses to try to take place of a child or elderly loved one, so people will love on them. And we have a story about one coming in a house and being seen in its natural form, which is kind of, how do you describe it?
Like about 3 to 4 foot tall, and it was very grayish with like deep set dark eye sockets.
But unlike where a gray would be, this thing has no neck. It's kind of like a bulbous head and kind of bulbous shoulders, kind of idea. But that same family where this thing was seen by one person, another person in that family saw 2 of the same little girl. She sees the little girl and goes to pick her up. turns back with the little girl in her arms and sees the little girl standing at the foot of the bed. And so when she looks back at her, she sits down, whatever she's holding, looks back, and it runs off and it's gone. They couldn't find it after that. And we have lots of stories about people in that family seeing that little girl when she wouldn't be at home. It would be there. So we don't know if it's something that's just attached to that little girl at the time, or if it was the trowel that the other person saw in the house at one point. So that kind of leads back to the fairy thing, because we have a lot of stuff like that. We have little people. Jefferson Street in Crawfordsville is famous for the little people. You'll see a lot of people have stories about they would go past this one alley that's still brick to this day, and they would see little people there.
But they described them as being all white, like paper white. Their clothes were white, their hair was white, their skin was white. It was all like this papery white color. And one of the stories we heard, two girls were playing by the alley. They looked down and they saw a male and female of whatever this was.
And these are like 1 to 2 foot tall. They're very, very small.
And that they were beckoning for the children to come down the alley to them. And they, of course, didn't go. And they're adults now. And they told us, they said, it was something that even then as children, we knew that if we went down to the end of the alley where they were, we never would have came back. Like, you felt that.
And that's one of those stories that we hear a lot in the area. We hear a lot of stories about these little people. We heard a story where a lady had one would sit on her dresser and watch her as she brushed her hair. They're all over the place. We have it's insane. I bet 50 stories I have written down of these little people, and they're always described the same way, as being so white it's almost like paper. It's a very weird description of a creature or something in the area. Of course, the one I found one article for that I'm trying to find a collaboration of is the giant skunk. We have a story about fox hunters going out in a local paper. They came back terrified because their dogs ran off, because as soon as they came across the skunk, the dogs became terrified and ran away. And it was supposed to be the size of a small barn, but they said it's a skunk, but it's the size of a small barn, and we're like, never heard of that thing before. So that's something new that we're trying to look more into and try to find some more things about. But I mean, there's so many stories. We have Dogman, we have Bigfoot, we have Deer Man, we have some kind of a satyr-like creature that I wouldn't call a deer man so much as more of a satyr over in Wingate, not very far from here.
Thunderbirds.
We have Thunderbirds like crazy. We have I don't know how many sightings of Thunderbirds throughout the area, even to the point where I was at work one day and my coworker said, "What is that?" And she was convinced she saw a Thunderbird, because she said the wingspan dwarfed the truck she was driving to pick me up. It was so large that she said it was like a plane drove across her, but it was a bird, and it terrified her. So it could be a Thunderbird or a large condor or something like that that's not native to our region. Kind of idea.
The giant bat by the cemetery.
Yeah, we have a giant bat that is seen regularly by a cemetery not very far from Crawfordsville, and it's huge. They and different people describe it almost the exact same way as this giant white bat that's got a wingspan somewhere between 8 and 12 feet long, and it's supposed to be just huge, which makes me wonder, is it kind of like a Mothman kind of idea? Or is it something different? Because in a similar area of the county, I also have gargoyle sightings. Several of them have been talked about, that people have seen gargoyles. And they describe them just like you would see a gargoyle in an old church, but it's something that was up walking around or flying in the area. So the county's full of stuff like this. And it's very strange. And I could go all day about every little tiny thing. It's insane how many of them are here.
And we love to talk about this stuff.
Yes.
So people can feel free to reach out to us. We'll talk about it.
Sounds good. And your book, Ghosts and Legends of Crawfordsville, Indiana, where can people get that at?
Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, Walmart, online. Of course, Barnes & Nobles here in Indiana. The Lafayette one has it on the shelf. Any museum in Crawfordsville has it. You can go to any of our museums and pick it up. And of course, Shop Small here in Crawfordsville has it on their shelves. And of course, every time we do a ghost walk, we have books on us for people who'd like to get an autographed copy.
Awesome. And also your website, legendsloresandhauntings.com. People can go there and check stuff out.
Legendsloresandhauntings.com. I try to keep it up to date with all the events, the ghost tours, when we're doing talks and things like that as much as I can. Sometimes people will do private talks, so I don't update those, but we do anything that's open to the public are on there regularly. And anyone who's interested in anything like next year's convention, this year's convention kind of thing can reach out to me through there and I can get it. And it's legendloreandhauntings.com as well as that's the same for the Facebook page.
Cool. And then the convention is October 26th this year from 10 to 4 at the Armory in Crawfordsville. What are you calling the convention exactly?
Crawfordsville's first ever paranormal convention.
Okay.
Nice.
Sounds good.
Pretty simple.
Right on.
We figure we'll do a poll at the first one and let people figure out what name they'd like to do for continuous. Leave it up to the public.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, there you go. Have a little contest.
It's the same idea. We tell everybody on our walks, the tours, this is your tour. It's what you make it. If you want to stop and ask questions or go deeper dive on something than we've done, we'll stop and we'll do what you want to do. So we also want, yes, we're hosting this convention, but this convention belongs to the public. It is what you're going to make it. So we're excited to experience it with you.
Awesome. Well, we can't wait. And
we're looking forward to it.
We want to thank you guys so much for being on the show with us tonight and talking about your paranormal and crazy cryptid activity going down there in Crawfordsville.
That's pretty awesome.
Thanks for having us.
I'm excited to get down there and check it out.
We're glad to have you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll have you back again.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
All right. Well, appreciate it again, guys. We'll get this episode out here sometime in the future, hopefully sooner than later, and I can let our listeners know more about the book, your website, and the event that we'd like to see everybody at.
Right.
So,
sounds great. Thank you.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks.
You too.
Talk soon.
Take care.
See ya.